All right, so we're going to learn about ancient China today. I'm excited too. Now, hopefully you noticed in your packet that chart that I showed you. That might be a good way of organizing your notes. The abbreviations down the side said Persia, P-E-R-S-I-A. Using those abbreviations is actually a really good way of breaking down history content, because Persia actually stands for political, economic, religious, social, innovation, and arts. Kind of the key components of any civilization. And that's the way that your book discusses these early civilizations. And so that's how we're going to go through these early civilizations. We're going to break them up into their parts. And we're going to take a look at how they run their government and how they run their economy. We're going to look at characteristics of their society. And the reason we're going to do that is because it's then going to make it a lot easier to compare ancient China with ancient India, with the ancient Mediterranean, with a more modern China. We can compare just the governments and say, how are they similar? How are they different? That's one of the things we're going to ask you to do a lot in this class. So right away, let's put them side by side and see what we come up with. So when we look at ancient China, which is just the River Valley civilization, and we compare it to classical China, which is when we have the creation of the dynasties, and society has become more complex, we're going to see some things that they have in common and some things that are obviously widely different. It'd be like comparing you when you were 5 to the way you are now. Some things are obviously still the same. Your hair color, your eye color are probably still the same. But are you taller? We hope. If you're not, I apologize. If you maxed out at the age of 5 and haven't grown since, I'm sorry. So if that helps you think about China in those terms, China when it's 5, China when it's 16, it's grown up a little bit. So early on, it's just along the river valleys. Early on, it develops pretty much on its own. It doesn't have a lot of outside contact. There aren't any other major civilizations around to help them learn. And for whatever reason, fairly early on, they develop a central form of government. Now, you're going to hear these two terms all year long, so let's talk about them now. A central government versus a regional government. What would some of the characteristics of a central government be? Good. Excellent. There is one person in charge, and they are at the center of power. What else? No city-states. No independent city-states. All of the cities in that territory would be under the control of this central ruler.
Usually there are bureaucracies that help keep the empire uniform.
Awesome. Because this one guy is ruling so much area, that's really hard to do by yourself. So you're going to have help. You're going to have advisors. You're going to have what we call bureaucrats, government workers. You guys know we have a bureaucracy here in this country? Does the president run the whole country by himself? No. He's got hundreds, thousands of people that help him. He's got, the State Department, the Defense Department, the Department of Transportation, the Department of the Treasury. Those are all bureaucratic offices that focus on one part of the government, so that the president can kind of look over the whole thing, and they take care of the specific details. That's what's going to happen in a strong central political system. And that's what China, for whatever reason, decides to develop. And for being isolated, they learn stuff real fast. I mean, this is just a short list of all the things they come up with. And please don't feel obligated to write them all down. These are simply examples of the advanced technology that they develop not too long after they discover agriculture. I mean, there's some parts of the world where they discover agriculture and then nothing new happens for, a couple thousand years. But with China, it just seems like it's one new idea after another. I mean, they develop farming, then they develop better architecture. They learn how to tame horses. They start making metal. They learn how to make pottery so they can hold water. I mean, just idea after idea after idea. It just keeps coming. And so even ancient China was very advanced by comparison to a lot of other early civilizations. And then you look at classical China, and they're just going to keep going. It's like an avalanche. There's just no stopping them. They're going to be the first society to enter what we call the classical period, where the government is sophisticated enough, society has clear-cut social classes, they've developed art, science, some of the luxury things that basic societies wouldn't have. China's the first one to get to that benchmark. And they're able to do that because they don't get invaded very often. There's nobody coming in and messing things up, making them start over. It's like for those of you that have lived in the same place your whole life, your circle of friends has probably just constantly grown. You still know a few people that you knew when you were in the first grade, and then you just added to that over time. Now me, I moved 16 times by the time I graduated high school. Longest relationship I had with anybody in terms of friendship was like a year, 2 years. And then the people I would keep in touch with, through letters. And then when the magical world of email came along, that was even cooler. So I was always having to start over. I was always having to be the new kid again and again and again. If you got to stay in the same place, you never had to do that. You just kept adding more and more people to your social network. That's China. China doesn't get invaded. China doesn't have to start over. China doesn't have to rebuild. They're able to just consistently and constantly grow. And are we all good on what we mean by mandate of heaven? Divine kings, son of heaven? Are we all good on that general concept? They create a political system where the gods have given the emperor his right to rule. And so if you as the people don't like what he's doing, can you complain? No. Because if you complain about what the emperor is doing, what are you really complaining about? You're complaining about the gods. And does that seem like a smart thing to do? No. Right. Because you get zapped. And nobody wants to get zapped. All right, so we good here? Do we need more time? Okay. All right, basic things about China from a geographical standpoint. And again, if you already know it, don't write it down. Now, there's a mistake here. Can you find it? It's not in Southeast Asia. Where is it? Good. How many of you already copied that down? All right. Don't. Now, how many of you think I put it there on purpose just to mess with you? I appreciate it. No, but that's just a mistake. All right, other geographical things about China. From an agricultural standpoint, they had 2 different crop zones. Mr. Diamond in his article was complaining about agricultural civilizations having, a lack of diversity in their diet. You're pretty much stuck with one crop. One of the things that helps China grow so fast is they have two. They have wheat and they have rice, and they can trade them to the opposite area. So most people are able to have a diet with two basic staples, not one. That's unusual. And so that results in population increase. But until the population gets huge, where is everybody going to be living? Along what? Near what? Rivers. Why do we live along rivers? Because there's water. And why is water so important? You need water to drink. You need to water your crops. It's the fastest mode of transportation available at that point, assuming you can build a boat. So that's why it takes so long for people to move anywhere but where water is. And it also helps that China has lots of natural barriers that kind of keep people in and keep people out. You've got a fairly significant mountain range to the south called the Himalayas. You may have heard of them. They're pretty big. And there's a pretty significant desert to the west. Any guesses what that is? Oh, that kind of wraps. But there's another desert to the north. You're right. The Gobi Desert. Right. Oh, it does say north. Man, I'm 0 for 2. That's not good. Yes, sir, you are right. So because the population expands, because their technology increases, they're able to expand the territory they control. China just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Yes, ma'am? China's in East Asia, not Southeast, and the Gobi Desert's in the north, not the west. Of China. Right, I misspoke. My notes are right, I'm wrong. Okay. It's in the north, yes. All right, we good here? Ish? More or less? Any sort of response is welcome at this point? Okay. Now, another note-taking tool. Doodling is actually good. So if having little pictures in the margins helps you, if it helps you remember what is in the notes at this point on the page, do it. If you want to draw a little rice bowl so that you can remember this part's talking about geography and food and what's being grown, do it. If you want to take a colored pencil and draw boxes around different sections and notes, do it. If you just want to use Roman numerals, do it. All right, this is a map from your textbook, but it shows the rapid expansion of these Chinese dynasties. And so we start the very beginning with the Zhao, this small green section. And then that rapidly expands as we get to the Qin, which is the outline in red, and then ultimately the Han, which is going to take you all the way over here to Korea, and also down here to what today is Vietnam, in addition to all the rest of this, which is pretty impressive conquest. And again, Himalayas down here, desert up here. Now, I got a lot of emails over the summer from people that were really struggling with how to complete the chart when it came to China's religions. Because some of you were looking at that and going, China doesn't have a religion. I don't understand. What am I supposed to write? And you're right. They don't have a normal religion. They don't have a religion that professes a belief in a supreme deity the way that the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims do. They don't have a wide variety of gods, like the Greeks and the Romans and the Hindus do. So do they even have a religion? Well, we can debate that one for a while, and I've actually had other people that teach history tell me that there is a version of Confucianism that does actually worship a deity. I'd never heard that before. I don't know if it's true. And since my geography skills are apparently already on the fritz, I'm not even going to debate that one right now. But what you do need to know is that if you are ever asked to compare religion in India with religion in China, what should you talk about in terms of China's religions? Taoism, Confucianism, and potentially legalism. Those are China's quote-unquote religions as far as comparison goes. Now, if you want to be more correct and call them philosophies, I don't think anybody would blame you. But that doesn't help you if you get a question about comparing religions. So, what does China's belief systems look like? Does the very first point remind you of anything? What's that? All right, it sounds a little Taoist. You're right. Think broader. Think comparison. All right, obedience to the state, definitely legalistic. Think bigger. Think outside of China. What does that kind of statement remind you of? Who else does it remind you of? India? Who else? Who? It could be the Romans. Who else? Christianity. What else? Almost every major religion. Exactly. This is a very common overarching theme for pretty much every belief system on the planet. Live a good life here, and if you live a good life here, that's going to keep your society running smoothly. Regardless of what you call it, you will find that sort of statement in every major religion. The second one is a little bit more unique to China and other Eastern faiths. This idea of harmony and balance between man and nature. In Eastern faiths, man is not necessarily dominant over the earth. Man is supposed to live in harmony with earth. How does that compare with Western religions? Yeah. If you look at the Judeo-Christian Muslim religions, and you look at their creation story, what did God tell man to do? Right. You are in dominion over this creation. You get to name all the stuff, and then you're in charge of it. If you look at the Eastern religions, man is told to be in balance with nature. And we're going to see over the next couple thousand years, that's really going to make a huge difference in how these societies function. Now, some societies are really good at, they came up with one system of religion and they applied it to everybody and it worked. China doesn't do that. China has three. And you guys already listed them. Taoism, Confucianism, and what's the last one? Legalism. And so here's a super short summary for each one. Confucianism is all about ethical behavior for both the leaders and the common man. Everyone, according to the teachings of Confucius, everyone should be ethical. No one is above society's moral code. Whether you are the emperor or the lowliest peasant, you have a responsibility to do the right thing. Now, Taoism is going to take some parts of that, but it's also going to stress more of an individual spirituality. There's something larger out there than yourself, and so you need to live a life of humility in recognition of that fact. So again, it accomplishes the same thing. Live a good life, not because you're told to, but because there is something out there that's greater than you, and you should show respect. And then legalism just says, look, if you're not the ruler, you suck. So sit down, keep your mouth shut, and do what you're told. Not because it's right, not because there's something out there in the cosmos that's bigger than you, but because if you don't, I will kill you. So all three are accomplishing the same thing, but using very, very different motivators. Confucianism appeals to your moral side. Do it because it's the right thing. Taoism appeals to the spiritual side. Do it because you're just this tiny speck in a huge cosmos. And legalism says, do it or I'll kill you. So, you pick what works. Some of you probably would need that level of motivation to do what you're told. Now, the last bullet point is going to hold true for most early societies. The stuff that the upper class believes is not necessarily what the lower class believes. Why would there be a difference? Why would there be a difference between what the upper class believes and what the lower class believes? Yes, ma'am. Very good. So part of this is peasants are going to need something to motivate them to push through this awful existence that they've been assigned to. If you're elite, if you're wealthy, if you're living in a palace and you got great clothes and great food and beautiful men or women, pick your pleasure, you don't need a whole lot to convince you that life can get better because you're pretty much on top. But if you're toiling in the fields day after day and going back to your little hovel of a shack at night, wondering whether or not you're going to have enough food to get through tomorrow, you need a little bit more. You need something that promises you, yes, this is worth it. I should do the right thing because there's something better coming. Why else might there be a difference? Nick?
Peasants are fully educated and they don't have enough time to learn about their new religion and other stuff.
Indeed. Peasants are often going to have a fairly simplistic worldview. Peasants are most often going to be the ones that believe in natural spirits. They are the ones that will most often try to appease the god of thunder or the god of rain or the god of the good harvest. The upper class will most often have the opportunity to learn and read and believe in more established religions. We're going to see this in place after place and time after time. We good here? Yeah? Yes, sir. Yeah, you're still going to see some crossover. It's usually not going to be a solid line. Peasants on this side and upper class on this side. You'll still see lots of upper class people believing in natural spirits or, worshiping ancestors or things like that, the same kinds of things that peasants will do. But the upper classes will have more opportunities to be exposed to something more official, something that comes in a book. The teachings of Confucius are not necessarily available to the peasant because they can't read. The upper class at least could be exposed to that and go, that kind of makes sense. I think I'll try it. So yeah, good question. Any others? Okay. So, put you to the test. You're going to tell me which of the three of China's belief systems you think this comes from. So the first one says, I take no action, and the people are reformed. I enjoy peace, and people become honest. I do nothing, and people become rich. I have no desires, and people return to the good and simple life. Does it sound like Taoist, Confucianist, or legalist? Or do you have questions first? Questions? Okay, who thinks this is Taoist? All right, who thinks it's Confucianist? And who thinks it's legalist? All right, nothing wrong with confusion. It's Taoist. Again, harmony and balance. I take no action, and people do good things. We're peaceful, and people become honest. I do nothing, and people become rich. I'm not forcing anything on them. So it's definitely not legalist. But people here are simply doing things because it's their place in the world. Now, it also does sound Confucianist, right? Because it sounds like I'm just doing the right thing. And so you're going to see there's a lot of crossover with these belief systems. Second one, the gentleman cherishes virtue. The inferior man cherishes possessions. The gentleman thinks of sanctions. The inferior man thinks of personal favors. Here we have a choice. You are deliberately choosing to do something and value something. Who thinks this is Taoism? Who thinks there's no way it's Taoism because we just did that one and he would never duplicate it? All right, so who thinks this is Confucianist? Who thinks this is legalist? It is Confucianist. All right, so last one. The nature of man is evil. His goodness is acquired. His nature being what it is, man is born first with a desire for gain. If this desire is followed, strife will result and courtesy will disappear. Who thinks, of course, this must be legalist because we haven't used that one yet? You're wrong. It's Confucianist also. Confucianism does believe that if people don't follow their moral behavior, that society will go right down the toilet. Confucianism does believe that man does have a fundamentally selfish nature that he must fight against, which is why this is Taoist. There's no conflict here. This is like, oh, it's easy to be good. This is like, no, this is hard. Being good requires a conscious decision to do the right thing. Confucius says that people can choose to do the right thing and make society a good place, or you can choose to be evil and selfish, and society will suffer as a result. Yes. But legalism says man is naturally evil and there's just no way around it. Legalism says the best form of government, if everybody's evil, is to have the most evil person at the top. Because the most evil person then would have absolutely no qualms, no restrictions on doing whatever he had to do to make people obey. The most evil person would have had no problem chopping people's heads off, torturing them, locking them up in prison, stealing their children, whatever they need to do to make people obey. So legalism says, yes, man is evil, and so you have to do whatever it takes to make him listen. Confucius says, man can be evil, but man has a choice. It's very much Machiavelli. I don't know if he was influenced by it. By that point, there certainly is contact with China, but it's also not the only place that comes up with the idea that brute force is the best form of government.
If these philosophies, they all overlap so much, why does China have three philosophies?
How many different branches of Christianity are there? I usually lose track after 15 or so. It's because people will usually agree on some of the major points, but then disagree on how it's executed, or on some of the details. The same is true here. They all want people to be well behaved and society to function, but they disagree on how to get there. A Taoist would never agree with a legalist that brute force is okay. A Confucianist would disagree with a legalist for much the same reason. But the legalist is going to say, look, you're all kidding yourselves. I see murder and theft every day, and the only way to make people stop is to threaten them with something worse. Now, this is usually a part that we skip through fairly quickly once we get going, which is sad because I'm sure several of you are actually very interested in art. And you're probably incredible artists or painters or sculptors or musicians or whatever, and so you'd love to spend time just learning about this part. Sorry, we can't. But we'll throw this out here for those of you that are really interested in it, because it will help you gain a sense of what society was like. Because nothing gives you a better indication of how a society is functioning than the kind of art it's producing. And one of the things that we see about China, because China is so naturally focused, you do see this balance, this harmony. When it comes to their art, nature plays a primary role. Nature is the subject or the topic of a lot of the art that is created. And when we say art, we don't just mean paintings on the wall. We mean it's the subject of poetry. It's reflected in the figurines and the sculptures that are created. It's etched on the pottery. You'll see lots of animals, lots of trees, lots of still water. All things that reflect this very harmonious idea. Now, that's going to be in direct contrast to the next place we visit, which is India. India is going to be a riot of color. India is going to be an explosion of artistic expression. It's going to be loud. It's going to be vibrant. It's going to be exotic. China's is going to be much more soothing and serene. And that tells you something about those societies. It tells you something about the people that live in those societies. Art is a great way to study history. Any questions on this? Typically whatever's available. For whatever reason, precious stones have been valued in every major society. So whether it's gold and silver, whether it's diamonds or rubies or emeralds or sapphires or onyx or marble or whatever, they will absolutely use whatever they can get their hands on. We need another minute? Are we good? Okay. All right. All right, this will be our last one for today. All right, looking at society, what kinds of things would we talk about when discussing a civilization's society? This is something you need to know, because you will get questions a lot that says, compare society in China and India. What kinds of things fall under the category of society? Yes. Social hierarchies. Excellent. Who's in the upper class? Who's in the lower class? That is absolutely part of society. What's something else? Yes. Work specialization. I like that. Yes. How work gets done. Who does it? Within the hierarchy, how are people valued? We already know something about how China treats its merchants. Does China like its merchants? No. What else could go in there? Yes. Morals. The things that keep society functioning. The ideas that keep society together. What else? Yes, ma'am. Income. It could, especially as it relates to where people fall in the hierarchy. Income's a tricky one, though, because you could also talk about it with economics. So sometimes something like that can be really versatile, because that can allow you to cross over from one characteristic to another. We're missing one more really big one. Not quite as much. Other than mentioning who's going to be at the top of the hierarchy, we really don't want to touch politics here, because we want to touch politics when we talk about their governments. But there's one other big one that falls into society. Yeah, we can talk about languages, clothing, things like that, cuisine, things that would make society unique. Yeah. Yes. Gender roles. How are women treated? We are going to beat that topic to death by the end of the year. When you finish this course, you will pretty much be an expert on gender issues of the past 4,000 years.
What about now?
If we're lucky, we get to the 20th century. I can only do so much. There's a lot of history we have to cover. But one of the big things to talk about when we talk about aspects of society for different civilizations is the relationship between men and women, between husband and wife, between parents and children, relationships of power, relationships of obedience. That's a huge topic when we discuss society.
Are there any major civilizations that are matriarchs?
No, sir. The closest we ever get is the Bedouin. But that's not until chapter 6. Yep. Bless you. All right, so some of the quick highlights. It's an agricultural society, which means who's at the top? The men. Which group of men?
Farmers.
No, farmers, despite the fact that they grow the food that feeds everybody else, farmers are never at the top. The people that don't have to farm are the people at the top, the social elites. Politicians, religious people, those are going to be the kind of people that end up at the top of most every hierarchy. And so in China, what we see is that the people that end up owning the land and the government workers that oversee that civilization makes up 2% of the population, but they have all the power and all the wealth. And then there's a really big gap, and then you've got everybody else. The laborers, the peasants. What are artisans? Merchants and craftspeople. The people that actually make stuff. Right. Good. And then we've got this fun group called the mean people. Now, they're not angry. They're not rude. They do the mean work. The lowly work. The bad work that nobody else would want to do. These are your garbage collectors. These are your people that turn animal hides into leather and have to work with the smelly chemicals all day long. These are the people that do the jobs that nobody else wants to do, but still need to get done. Interestingly, mean people also includes musicians, actors, athletes. Basically, all the people that we revere today are the exact same people that would be at the very, very bottom of Chinese society. Because the Chinese look at them and go, you know what, you're kind of funny, you're entertaining, but you really make no valuable contribution to society. I mean, LeBron James, freakish athletic ability, but seriously, who cares if he can put an orange ball into a hoop? That does absolutely nothing for the betterment of society. And yet he makes millions of dollars a year. He makes millions of dollars a month. People that drive NASCAR, they drive in a circle for 4 hours, and the guy that drives the fastest in a circle for 4 hours makes millions of dollars. Has society been in any way improved by this? No. That's the Chinese argument here. These people have no value other than being entertaining, so why would we put them anywhere but at the bottom? Yes? Well, they don't degrade it. Much like merchants, they value it. They just don't respect it. They recognize it's needed, but they would never look at a merchant or an artist and go, I want to grow up to be that person. They'd be like, all right, don't you dare become an artist. They're not unsuccessful, they're just not respected. I mean, the guy that owns the waste management company is incredibly wealthy. But does anybody ever grow up thinking, man, I want to be in charge of trash when I get older?